breakdown, and I've never told anybody any details about my personal life really, and this video is going to be real, it's going to be vulnerable, and it's going to be me sharing some stuff as well. So, 3 things in life that are guaranteed: death, taxes, and grief and trauma. I have undergone a lot of grief, a lot of trauma this year and the past month, and even now, sort of going through my fights, and this is not as much of me sharing that as me sharing with you what I do to get over my grief. Grief is an interesting thing because if you don't fight it, it could never go away. And it's scary. So, a little bit about me. This is the first thing. I've never told anybody my story. I do plan on doing kind of an about me video when I hit, a certain amount of subscribers where I feel like people want it, but I am a psychologist. I am a PhD student finishing my PhD in psychology. I'm also a college professor. That's just a little bit about me personally. The human mind fascinates me, and it's in this backdrop, this story, that I find my love for ASMR and ways to help people with depression and anxiety. But today, I want to talk about grief and trauma and what I do as a person who has felt it deeply to move on and move on quick. I was in a relationship over a year long, and she broke up with me, and I just moved on, and there was no grief, there was no trauma, and I found these steps from a relationship that I was in 3 years relationship, and that ended and wrecked me, destroyed me. And so it's from this that I truly sought to understand grief and trauma, and I truly hope that this helps you, whether you're going a fight of your own, or whether you're doing this just for relaxation, or because you find it interesting, or for the future. If one person sees this, it'll be all well worth it. I know this video is not my normal. I don't expect it to do great, but again, if one person sees it and it helps them, it's worth it. It's all worth it. So, honestly, as someone who deeply understands the brain, mechanics, emotions, trauma scares me. When your brain is in pain, it takes over. It almost betrays you, and you find out how much of a lack of control you actually have over it. So, even as a psychologist, I feel like I can control anger, sadness, a lot of emotions. But trauma is something that is very difficult to combat, and this is my first piece of advice to you and everybody else, including myself. Do not diminish your trauma. In America, particularly where I am, it's very much based on scales of measurement. Okay, something's bad, how bad? That's the first response. Something's good, how good? When we are experiencing trauma, when we're experiencing grief, the knee-jerk reaction is how much grief. And we do one of 2 things. We're either sharing stories with other people and comparing our traumas and griefs against them, which is wrong, or we are looking at our own trauma and seeing somebody else that has been through something that you consider to be far worse and belittling your own trauma. Both of these are awful to do. question that someone asks him is, what trauma is the worst? And he says, that's easy. He says, it's yours. It's your trauma. Your trauma is the only one you can feel. Your grief is the only thing that you can feel. As much as you feel for the Jews and the Holocaust, as much as you feel for people starving in other countries, something that is personal to you is always going to be worse, and that's okay. That's okay. Do not diminish your trauma. Do not tell yourself to suck it up, and it's not that bad, because someone else has it worse. Don't do that. Allow yourself the space to process it. It is not a competition to see whose trauma is the worst. Okay? It's just not. That's a big step. That's a big freaking step. Okay? Be patient with yourself and allow yourself this leniency, because here's the next step. Don't believe your brain. Your brain sucks. I can tell you, we have studied the brain for a long time, and we still don't know hardly anything about it. The brain turns on you. Let's just say that. And that, by the way, I should say, these steps, they apply to people around you dying. They apply to people who have left you. They apply to every type of trauma and grief that involves another person. Okay? So, when your brain is going through these systems, it only reminds you of a fairy tale version of events that is not true. If you're in a abusive relationship and you finally get out, you're gonna look back and be like, man, maybe that relationship wasn't that bad. We had great times. Your brain wants to forget the bad times and take the good times and make them seem like they were even better. Your brain is a liar, okay? It's painting a different picture of events, and you cannot trust it, alright? Whenever somebody leaves you, this more particularly pertains to breakups, divorces, separations. It hits your ego, and it hits it hard, and you start thinking that you're unlovable, that no one loves you. You are loved, okay? And I don't mean that as like a cheesy Hallmark commercial or one of those like hot sauce packets that you get in Taco Bell with the sayings. There's someone out there who loves you, okay? And whenever your brain is in pain, that's the last thing it's thinking, okay? And this is what causes people to do horrible things to themselves, is not remembering that there are people out there who do love you, okay? So, think about this. I heard this said, and it's funny, here I've studied some of the greatest psychological minds in the world, and one thing that keeps coming back to me was just from a random YouTube video, and it's so true. This again applies to anybody, breakups, deaths. When somebody leaves you, it is not your heart that's broken, it is your expectations of that person. And let me say that again. When somebody leaves you, it is not your heart that's broken, but your expectations of that person. No matter who it is, we create pictures, we create movies, cinemas, photos that aren't there. We see children, houses, fun, family, future. Those are your expectations. When somebody is suddenly taken away from you, either they died, well then it's very much clear cut where the pain is coming from. But when somebody voluntarily leaves you, or even if you leave them, the brain doesn't have any process it other than convincing itself that that person is dead as well. Now, this is obviously a problem because let's say that you have social media and you know that they're not dead, and then your brain is just really confused because it's like, well, wait a second, they're dead. They're not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be like this, and it just breaks you down. But understand this: that person did not hurt you. Your expectations of that person hurt you. In one fell swoop, all of those expectations, those dreams, are gone. This is an area that has haunted me for most of my adult life. It's this one right here. Dating for intentionality, with a purpose, for a goal. If I don't envision myself and see myself, in that particular role of having a future, there's no point, because I don't want to go through the pain of having a short-term relationship. So I build up that photo bank of lies that I'm telling myself. And then when that person leaves, I'm devastated because of that. But here's the thing. It wasn't that person that hurt me. It was my expectations. And I'll tell you why this is important, because people, you can't control them. You can't control how people feel, how people think. You can't control how you do and how you process. So, this is especially painful for younger individuals. Not that it doesn't hurt people who are up in age, it does. But when you are younger, you literally have your entire life ahead of you. And if this entire life are your expectations that are never going to come true, it's devastating. It takes away your hope. It takes away your will to live. So, just understand that it is your expectations that have been hurt. So, you can't control them, but you can control yourself. And here's the thing. I know you might not want to hear it, but, and again, this applies for every person, right? Every situation. There will be so many more, billions and billions of people who are willing and ready and able to love you exactly like you are. So if somebody died and you say, I don't know if I'll ever find somebody, you will. If somebody left you and you say, I'll never find anybody, you will. Okay? This is hard when you're in the fire, but I promise you that is true. Okay? As somebody like me, I have a very hard time believing, looking back and seeing all of that as a wasted time. And I have to remind myself that there is no time wasted if you're willing to grow from your experience. There is something called the theodicy, which is an explanation of pain and suffering, and one of these ancient theodicies is by a man called Irenaeus, and he believed that we are intentionally made empty, incomplete, imperfect, and only through struggles can we find our way to completion. If you are not with the wrong person in the wrong situation, then how would you even know what a good situation was? How would you be able to appreciate it? How would you know what you're going to look for in the next person? There are pros and pluses, and very difficult to think that way at the time, but there is beauty in the pain, in the suffering, in the breakdown of a relationship. has been lying or hide certain things, and now you know what to look for, warning signs to not get yourself in that again. There is utility for those who seek it. In any case, try not to build your walls so high that no one can ever break them down again. And that's a difficult thing as well. My next tip is to put yourself back into life. We are habitual creatures. If you are depressed, distraught, because that's what you're fighting, right? From the very second grief hits you, you're fighting depression, which can't come in and control your life. From the very second you're fighting it. Be kind to yourself and make yourself uncomfortable by putting yourself in your life. If you need a day or two, of course take a day or two, but put yourself back into society. You will never feel more like you don't belong in the world than when you're fighting grief and nobody knows it. When you're sitting there in a room and everyone's smiling and laughing, you're sitting there and you're just numb, you're raw. But if you go out and you go through the motions, your brain and your body might sync back up and say, oh, we have to carry on with life. And sometimes you do. Okay? I can tell you this. Not every time you do it is it going to work right away. But I can tell you, every time that you do not do it, you'll never move on. You have to be able to put yourself back in a situation and accept it. And then my last step is going to be get help. So, the majority of the time I've been able to pull through on my own. But there's absolutely no shame in therapy. There's no shame. If you broke your arm falling off a bike, no one would make fun of you for going to the hospital and getting it fixed. When you are in shock, when you have been traumatized, when you are experiencing grief, and when your expectations have been broken, so is your brain. There is no shame in getting help. No shame. And we have to start destigmatizing that. We have to start destigmatizing that, especially for men. There's no shame in therapy. There's no shame in self-love. Okay, so these are my steps, and I'm going to go over them real quick with you again, in this order. Don't diminish your traumas. Your traumas are your own. They are the worst traumas in this world because they are yours. Don't diminish them. Don't believe your brain is lying to you. It's telling you stories that are not true about your past experiences, making them seem better than what they really were. You are loved. You are loved more than you know. In fact, the last person that I had to say goodbye to was euthanization. And that was the last thing that I said to them. And I think that if I was in that position, I'd want the same thing said to me. You're loved more than you know, and I'll miss you more than you know. And again, it's I'm being very vulnerable by saying that, because that's heavy. It's heavy, but sometimes, man, my family, when I was going through my period of grief and when I was in the fire, they never been through that before. And a lot of people, they don't know what to tell you. They don't know what to say to you. Sometimes you have to say it to yourself. You are loved. Tell it to yourself. Tell it out loud, okay? Meditate. Sit there and say, I love myself. Okay? So important. So important. So, set things into perspective. Remember, it's not the person that broke you, it's your expectations. You can't control them, but you can control you. So understand, you will laugh another day, you'll learn another day, you'll sleep another day, you'll eat another day, you'll smile another day. I don't know if this brings any of you comfort. These things don't necessarily bring me comfort, but there's no panacea. Someone said that every day when you wake up, it'll be the first thing on your mind, that person, until one day you'll wake up and it'll be the second, and then one day it'll be the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and then one day you won't even think about it. That's a promise. That's a promise. Okay? It was not wasted time if you learn from it. Okay? Learn from it, learn from it, and learn from it. Pull yourself back into your life and go out there and live your life. Surround yourself with different people, even society at large. I'm telling you, it's going to be strange. I've never felt more out of place in society than when I was going through my fire and being in just unbelievable grief, but there's something to it. Normalcy, habitual actions, and just being present that pull you out of a deep dark hole. And then get help. If all that happens and you're still suffering, get help. Get help. There's no shame in it. Get help. There's paid resources. There's free resources. But don't beat yourself up. Don't set markers and get upset with yourself when you don't hit those markers. It's a process. And don't settle and go out and get into another relationship with someone that does not deserve you because of it, okay? Anyways, that's it, guys. That's all that I wanted to say again. This video might get one view, and I'm perfectly okay with that, as long as that one person needed it. And you know what? I needed it as well. I needed this. I needed to remind myself and put things into perspective. So thank you all. If you want these videos, let me know. I have years and years and years of psychology history. I teach for a living. If you want me to teach you things, do professor role plays, whatever you want, just let me know. I'd be happy to share this. I'm ready to break down the walls a little bit, be more vulnerable and accessible.